don't have a lot of role models when it comes to, because like I can speak for myself. For example, the career options that I saw were like, oh, I could be a teacher, or I could be, I don't know, an English major or something, until I was like, no, I'm good at math. So it's just, it really, like the gatekeeping and the lack of role models in the field is what I feel like is one of the biggest contributors to this.
Alaa, I'm super happy that we got the chance to do this together. Thank you very much for your time tonight. We're going to start with the first question right away, and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how did your journey start?
Okay, so I'm very excited about this too. Really happy to be here, and thank you also for your time. Basically, it's a very boring start. I just started at university, very normal. I just found the computer science as an option, wanted to pursue it, pursued it, loved it a lot, continued, and I'm still here today.
Awesome. So for you, computer science did not like start as a child or anything like that. You discovered it while at university?
Yeah. Basically, the reason I picked it in the first place is like, strangely enough, because of art.
Okay.
I really like drawing, painting. It's always been a part of my life. And like, growing up, I was very good at math. I very much had potential in terms of like an engineering career. So I'm like, okay, that I didn't want to let go of the art, and I did not want to let go of the potential of the engineering career. I make decisions a lot to like really keep my bases as large as possible. So it was like, I was looking through, graphics was a thing. I'm like, okay, that's an art, and that's I'm not in graphics at all, but that was where I wanted to be. So art, math together. I still to this day like find computer science one of the most like unique art forms, because
it's interesting that you label it like an art.
It is an art form, because you can't tell me you've never looked at a piece of code and just like marveled at the magnificence of like
in many ways, yes.
Like, it's art.
Exactly. No, I always tell my students and everyone like when I discuss computer science, I say it's at the crossroad of so many disciplines. Like if you're curious about the world in general, like computer science is the place to be, right? It's the thing to study, because you can explore the art, you can explore music, you can explore the science, the hard sciences, you can dig really deep into the math, and it's a really nice discipline.
It could be everywhere.
100%, 100%. All right. So currently you are a software engineer at DataCamp. Can you tell me a little bit more about DataCamp? What is it and what do you do there?
So basically, DataCamp is a platform that allows learners to really develop their data skills, especially if they're interested in data science and things like that, but at their own pace. And it really offers these courses and this material completely in the browser, no setup and stuff like that. And it really just allows them to develop these skills as much as they can, and to as much depth or breadth as they wanted.
Interesting. So it's more of a guided learning journey through the data sciences. Okay. And like who is your typical audience? Like is it for professionals who are already in the field who want to like upskill themselves, or is it more geared towards beginners who want to break into the field?
There's actually a range. And so most people can find the content that really suits them in terms of where they are in their journey.
Okay, I understand. And is it a paid platform, or there are free courses for?
There are some parts of it that are free, but there is a big chunk of it that is paid.
Okay, and who builds this material? Do you have like engineers internally who prepare this?
It's basically, there are certain instructors that can provide these courses that have there's an agreement with them to make these courses. And that's basically where I believe the majority of the content is.
All right. So as a software engineer at DataCamp, what does your day-to-day look like?
So I'm mostly a full stack engineer, and I basically just, if there's a feature that needs to be developed or any kind of bugs that need to be fixed or something like that, I look through where I need to change. I change it within the code back front, and we push it out
Okay,
into the
awesome.
world.
Do you use any programming language on a daily basis? What is?
Yeah, basically, I guess maybe like 90% of my work is in TypeScript.
Oh wow, TypeScript.
So,
Okay, cool. How do you like TypeScript?
Honestly, I like it. I like its structure. I like that you can make it safe. It just
okay.
yeah.
It feels like a breath of fresh air as opposed to like regular vanilla JavaScript.
There's that. And also like I feel like because I came from a very object-oriented background, especially because I started in university, it just makes it much easier to just get into it rather than having to like see where I could potentially shoot myself in the foot when it comes to JavaScript.
100%. And you feel a little bit safer with types and things like that. What's the first programming language you were exposed to at university?
JavaScript.
JavaScript?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, because usually like universities start with stuff like Java, Python.
It is Java. So like my main training, like in terms of university, was Java. And so like the depth of my knowledge generally became like Java and C# because that was that was where I worked at with HedgeGuard. So like there's that. But what happened is that I started working on my first year of university at like the data side of the hospital at the American University of Beirut. So they just needed me to make some forms, and I was just like,
yeah,
I thought Java and JavaScript were the same thing at that time. Because
this is blasphemy for many. That a lot of people are gonna go crazy about this.
But I'm telling you, how long had I been programming at that point? Maybe like 3 weeks. Like, I mean,
I understand the confusion.
It was 3 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, I'm learning this in university, and then I see it, and I'm like, that's not what I'm learning at all.
Okay, that's a funny story. Yes, I'm pretty sure a lot of students during the early days, they had a lot of these misconceptions. I was at fault of similar things, definitely at the beginning of my career. And it's awesome to hear you speak about these things and to be comfortable with them. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your career progression, right?
Yeah.
You were based in Lebanon. You were a software engineer at HedgeGuard. How did you make the transition? You're currently in Belgium, right? And how did you make the transition to Belgium, new country, new everything, and DataCamp specifically?
So basically, the transition to Belgium was because I wanted to get a degree. The goal of moving from Lebanon for me at the beginning was to get my degree. And I knew that in more international settings, Lebanese degrees are not as valued as European degrees. Sad, but that's just like the perception, at least, that I have. And so that was basically what I wanted to do. Initially, I had continued working at HedgeGuard for a while. It became unsustainable for mostly financial reasons. And so I really had to look for something more stable at that point. And even then, I was at a point in my career where I really wanted to be closer to the user that I'm developing for. Because with HedgeGuard, even though I loved the work that I was doing, I have to be honest, I'm not someone who's an investor, or I don't do stocks and options and these kinds of things. So it's really harder for me to put myself in the mind of the user.
Interesting.
But in terms of, for example, DataCamp, it's much easier because at some point I was a user. And so it became very like attractive to me for not just the actual work that I would be doing, but also because, life, it was just more stable, more predictable for me in terms of really like reaching my goal of becoming stable in like Belgium or any other country.
Okay, I want to tackle multiple threads of the stuff you mentioned right now. So first one of them is, what degree were you pursuing? So you majored in computer science, as far as I know, yeah. And then which degree were you pursuing in Belgium?
I'm still pursuing, actually, I'm in computer science still.
Okay, so it's a master's in computer science?
Yes, technically, I don't know why it's called, it's a master's of engineering in computer science.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so is it more of a focus on the sciences or the engineering part? How do you feel the program is structured?
I mean, honestly, I cannot really tell you because like we have a mix. of it. Like we have the software design, we have some of the like really in-depth like functional programming things or like really deep logic understanding. So it really is just, it ranges over a lot of the parts.
Interesting. So like in terms of ratio between technical practice and theory, how do you feel like the program is split?
I have to be honest, I'm taking it really slow. So like my visibility on some of the later classes are just—
so the theoretical stuff might come in.
Yeah, it might come in a lot stronger later, but like so far, for example, the courses that I've taken, like distributed systems, is very, very on, like it's very practical because we even try to cover some of the more modern platforms. We have so like the software design, software architecture, all of these things are, I felt like you can very easily apply. Oh, I even have security classes that I took that are very, very easy to apply just in everything that I see every day. But again, there are some of them that are just, I don't know where to put them, but they're very interesting because they feel like puzzle solving. But I think their benefit shows in the way that it changes your thinking.
I understand. That's a nice way of putting it. When did you decide it's a good time to switch and pursue opportunities elsewhere? Do you think there's an optimal period that you can stay at a certain company or a position before you feel like you're missing out or the cost of opportunity is too high?
I think it's a very difficult question, and there isn't really like an optimal way of thinking about it because there are just so many variables, because no one is the same and everybody's situation is completely different. So for example, if someone in Lebanon right now tells me they like the job that they have, kind of, but they got an opportunity abroad, my initial gut reaction is just try the abroad. That's my initial gut reaction. But like in situations where someone is a little bit less constrained, it becomes more in, for example, if I want to like measure it on myself, it becomes more like, am I undervalued in this company? And my negotiations went nowhere. Is there really nothing that I can like, is there no one I can talk to really like see how to improve the situation, or like how to like measure how much my progress is? Is there no clear like progression path where I'm at right now? So that would be something that would make me consider like, okay, I want to see you somewhere where I can clearly see myself progress, or clearly like map out my own path. So there's that. Another thing I feel like it really, something that means a lot to me is, for example, if at some point the company's values no longer match my values, and like they do something, or they like create certain, I mean, sometimes like unsafe work environments, or I don't know, they make certain political decisions or things like that no longer match. But this is also coming from a very privileged position, because not everyone can make these kinds of decisions based on something like that. So sometimes you really need to stay on the job that you're at, no matter what they're doing. It really depends on your situation. But speaking from a privileged position, I think this is something for me at least, is worth considering. And another thing I think is like a good reason to start looking is, I don't know, passion changed. Life's too short. Life's too short. Of course, don't be shifty. Like, don't change your passion every 3 months.
Definitely.
But like, you know, if for example, like you find a certain job or a certain company, or you want to start a certain company or something like that, that's really like aligning with your passions, go for it. Like, life really is way too short.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective. And that's a very fresh way, or a fresh outlook to look at things. Usually I get answers like, yeah, it's usually 2.5 to 3 years time. And then I decide to jump to another opportunity. But it's interesting to hear you talk about, you know, what you want and what your ambition, your passions, and more importantly, the alignment of your values with the values of the company. This is, I think, a very important point that gets missed out a lot. And it becomes more prominent the more senior you become and the more, you know, advanced in your career you are, you want your own values to align with the place you work, and you want your own personal brand to align also with the brand of the company you work for. Okay, that's awesome. That's great to hear. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about something that we don't discuss often in our domain, and it's mental health, right? We talk a lot about productivity. We talk a lot about how we can become better, how we can become faster, how we can level up as engineers, but we rarely talk about our just mental well-being, right? Are you conscious of your productivity levels as an engineer? Do you prefer to be consistently productive with a predictable outcome, or do you prefer the bursts of extreme productivity, but then you like deal with the periods of very low productivity? So what is your way?
So to answer the first question, am I aware of my productivity? I'm hyper aware of my productivity. And I think it really is because of the whole like atmosphere around it. Was like, we always have to be getting better. You always have to. So of course I'm like, am I too slow? Am I doing too little? Okay. Right. But, and so yes, I'm very aware. But I think also in terms of the way that I work at like my productivity levels personally, I want to say that I am consistent, but I think I've grown enough to really give myself a realistic like reflection of what's going on. I am definitely the bursts of energy, and then I like slow down. But I think both, and I also think I'm not the only person who experiences this, but I also don't just experience the bursts of energy. There are certain time periods when, yes, everything is consistent, life's great, everything's working. So I think it's important to not box yourself in like, oh, I'm just that kind of productive. I'm just that kind of productive. Like I just have bursts of energy, or I'm just always consistent, or else I can't work, because even that is super affected by like the variables of life, right? Definitely, so things could be happening in like your personal life that just make you the kind of person who needs to have bursts and then rest for a long period of time, or like you need to be consistent for your own mental well-being, because like that's your comfort zone. So to me, it really like there is value in both forms of productivity, and on a personal level I've been both. And like I think it's super important to just really like reflect and see that eventually both of those like forms of productivity average out to about the same thing. And it's really like, as long as you're not, you know, shirking any kind of responsibilities, you're still meeting the deadlines, or you're still pushing out the features that you need to push out, like it's fine to be either one. And
interesting. So for you on a daily basis, do you have like a routine that you follow, certain things that you do like every day the same way, same everything, or is it more of you wake up and let's see what the world brings in?
I mean, I used to be a very strict person when it comes to time. So like my schedule used to be wake up at 6, gym at 7, finish gym at 8, work at 9, lunch at 12 or 1. I don't remember anymore because Europe is 12, Lebanon is 1. So I don't remember what I was doing there. And then finish the break, start over and do that. Make sure the meetings are in place. So I was very like, okay, finish at 6 and really finish at 6, because I will not tolerate working overtime sometimes. I realized I needed to be a little bit more flexible at the time, but it was just, it was comfortable, right? Yeah. And I still find a lot of comfort in routine, but it doesn't work for me anymore. Given what happened last year and all of the things that are happening now, it's much more difficult to sustain a routine because my mental well-being is unpredictable at this point. I mean, it's becoming more and more predictable now. But in the past year, there was just way too much struggle for me to really stick to a routine that I wanted to stick to. But now I'm kind of like, first half hour of the day, see all the tasks, make sure I time box them where I need them to be, and like have just try to be more flexible when it comes to where I put them.
Interesting. But, yeah. So usually people make the transition from chaos to a more structured, time managed way. It feels to me like you were more structured in your day, and then you sort of just accepted things being out of control. How do you feel this affected not only your productivity, because that's the angle I started with, but more importantly, your mental health, your levels of anxiety and things like that? Did it affect it in a negative way, or was it a positive transition?
It's really a mix. So the reason that it became chaotic, it was not like an intentional thing. So like there were some really huge life events, not very secret life events that just they mess with you, and in ways that you don't expect them to, right? And like I really lived in an illusion of control before. And truly after, like, I'm going to say, like after the explosion, it just like completely shatters this illusion of control. Like you really cannot predict anything or like you really don't have control over everything. So it's just a matter of me accepting this. I'm not there yet, but I mean, it's a matter of me accepting this and like truly understanding that I cannot control everything. And I especially cannot control the way that I respond to certain things now, because an event like that, it changes you on a fundamental
traumatizes
level.
you.
Exactly. Like that's basically what it is. It's PTSD at the moment.
I understand.
And it's still there, and it has fundamentally changed me. And because I'm so unpredictable, I have to accept that I am. Even though my comfort zone is routines and I like them, it's not something that is the most accessible to me at the moment. I'm fixing it. I'm trying to get out of the chaos again, but I really have to slow. I have to realize that I'm not the person that I was before, because at some point in the past like 3 or 4 years, I was working 4 things at the same time. I had a full-time job, part-time job. I was volunteering at 2 different communities. So I was able to do that, but I'm not the same person now. So like, even though it's just work and just studying, they both require an immense amount of work, but I'm not the same person I was before. So like, I really have to take it slow to really adjust to the way that my mind is now.
Yeah, obviously, and for those who are watching us who don't know what we're talking about, it's the 4th of August Beirut explosion. It was a gigantic event that led to the destruction of major parts of the city and the loss of many souls. It was a catastrophic event for a lot of the people who were living in Beirut, and for the people abroad as well, because we had family members, we had friends who, some of them passed away in the explosion, and it was very, very traumatic. So yeah, for this, I definitely understand this was a major life-changing event for many people. And I can understand if it's followed by a certain disruption in routine. My question was more aimed towards like the general situation. And I think in general, you answered that you're more comfortable with the routine part and gives you more structure in your day as opposed to the chaotic parts. All right. So how do you maintain your mental energy working as a software engineer? How do you have any tips for a healthier work-life balance? We talk a lot about work-life balance.
Yes. For this particular question, it's a do as I say, not as I do kind of question, because I'm extremely notorious for not knowing how to take proper vacations and breaks. I'm learning. My therapist is trying to force me to take vacations. I'm still working on it. But it's just a matter of, I guess one of the biggest things I would say is just have hobbies and like have a good network that is not directly related to your work, and really immerse yourself in these things. So immerse yourself in the like conversations and the outings and the like being around the people who are not super connected to your work. Like really just be present there, because like you have to disconnect. I know that there was a mentality at some point that I adopted. It's just like I have to eat, breathe, and like sleep code so that I can become a good programmer. But like, no, that's not how it works. You have time to improve and you have time to rest. And like, if you're like me and you don't really know how to rest very much, have like the hobbies. So learning how to play an instrument, which is something I'm trying, or like going back to hobbies that you had as a kid, which is my painting and drawing, just like really being artistic in a certain way, to just disconnect completely, rather than just like still having it in the back of your mind. So I think that would be my advice, is just like take proper breaks.
100%. I learned this the hard way after my first burnout. Disconnecting completely, not just like disconnecting in the sense that, yeah, I'm gonna like take a weekend. It's more like completely get out of your laptop, don't touch your keyboard for an extended period of time. Not only like disconnect from work and do your side project, or disconnect from work and do something technical. No, like completely disconnect, disengage fully, so that we can come back fresh. Unfortunately for me, I'm horrible at it. When I found a little bit of free time, I started a YouTube channel. This is like an example of it, right? This is the evening for us, and we're recording a video.
But I mean, if you're passionate about it, sometimes it would not feel like too much work. So like, it's still a hobby. Like editing is not the same as coding.
True. But there are the technical aspects, same domain, same, you know, it just feels like it's just a continuation of a very long day. So we're going to switch gears one more time, Alaa, and I want to talk about another topic that I think you and I are both really interested in. For me, it's a very, very important, let's call it an ongoing debate, but also there should be a lot of more actionable things being done on it. And this topic is the gender gap in tech. It's obviously enormous. It is more often than not, I personally see a lot of men being involved in the debate and being very vocal about why they think women are not more engaged, or ladies in general are not more engaged in this field. I see them putting out their opinions and their thoughts, even though they are not the ones concerned, you know, with the problem. So from your opinion, what are the reasons for this gender gap in this field?
I mean, for me personally right now, the perspective that I can offer is mostly related to like the Arab world, because that's where I was socialized and that's the majority of where my career was. I think some of the biggest things is that sometimes it's automatically lower pay. Like I've heard women say, like I've heard women tell me that, oh, this person told like this employer said that they will not pay me higher than a certain number because I'm a woman. And like senior women in this field do not get more than this, so I cannot pay you more. And so that's pretty demoralizing. You have moments where people just automatically assume you don't know what you're talking about. And like it just becomes it also like there's a lot of moments where like you're put on like the cleanup tasks. It's also important that women speak up and stuff, but speaking up sometimes is really not easy, depending on like the safety of the work environment, because it's so male dominated. Sometimes it's a very like frat house type environment, so it's not the safest to speak up in. And so I feel like eventually at some point it kind of becomes like, yeah, I don't need to be fighting my whole life, you know, because like there are even moments where like even when you speak to the higher ups, they will not value you more for your skills. Like they'd rather have someone else do it. And like I've even heard in some places where men would say, yeah, I'd rather not hire a woman if she's going to take a maternal leave. Wow, and so like it really just becomes demoralizing at the end. Like, okay, I'm gonna do cleanup tasks my whole life. No, I'm always gonna be told I'm wrong even when I'm right, because oh my god, the number of times when like I've heard women or myself suggest something and then someone else says it and they take the credit and it's just, but I just said that. Or like when it becomes like, yeah, you're right, but I'm right, so we're gonna do it my way, kind of thing. So it really just becomes like it's a constant struggle of like, I just don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah, I understand.
There's
it's I understand that perspective very well, in the sense that you just feel like the game is rigged already. Like the game is not a fair game.
There's also another point in which like you don't see a lot of women represented. So like younger girls don't often have someone to look up to see. Like you see the boys, they have like Musk and Zuckerberg, and even though they're questionable, but like, you know, there are
many role models, many examples.
There are many people to look up to, but like there are a couple of women, so, and like they're not as well known. So like the founder of Canva, for example, she's a tech founder, and like she's done very well, but she's not on the
no one talks about
exactly.
No one talks
but
about
like
them.
You always hear about all of the other ones, like hey,
the rocket boys, and
but like you don't have a lot of role models when it comes to, because like I can speak for myself, for example, like the career options that I saw were like, oh, I could be a teacher, or I could be, I don't know, an English major or something, until I was like, no, I'm good at math. So it's just it really, like the gatekeeping and the lack of role models in the field is what I feel like is one of the biggest contributors to this. I'm pretty sure there are other more scientific researches about this, but like this is from me as someone who's been in
I fully understand. I mean, I listen about the debate that's happening in the US and Western countries in general, and us coming from Middle Eastern Arab countries, we know that the problem is way, way worse in our part of the world. Like my mom's generation, my sisters, even my mom even tried, not a fault of her own, but this is how she was raised. This is what's familiar to her. She tried to bring up my sister in the same manner, right? In a like a patriarchal, male-dominated society where don't speak up, don't be too loud, don't do this, don't do that. This will not get you anywhere. Blah blah blah, and all of these very horrible things that no person
just be
should...
quiet, be proper.
Exactly, right? Like it's crazy, and I've seen my sister rebel all the time on all of these bad ideals, and I'm very happy that she did, right? But not everyone is in a position where they have a strong character for them to speak up and act, and oppose these bad practices.
And sometimes it's hard because sometimes the consequences are dire. To like rebel and speak up. Like it depends, really. I really don't want to paint such a dark picture. Like the Middle East already doesn't have such a good image, but like I'm just saying, like there are certain parts
but it happens
where, these kinds of like rebellious actions are, their consequences are too extreme.
I understand.
It's like, when you're socialized in that kind of environment, even speaking up is very difficult.
Did you feel like you're not able, you mentioned this already, but I just want to reiterate the idea a little bit, like in previous jobs that you've held, you felt like you were not able to be yourself and voice out your opinion? And
I mean, and like the consequences of that now is like, now I'm in a different environment where like I'm constantly reminded that my opinion is valued, but it's so hard to like break out of that shell. Like I'm doing it slowly, but I'm doing it, but it's so difficult because like, oh, so you actually want to hear what I have to say? Because when I had to say something before, it was like, but something, this is better, and like, it takes a lot to break out of that.
I understand. Yeah, it must be very difficult going through years of being, silenced in many ways. And now,
I mean,
it takes a little bit of time to adjust.
I wouldn't say it's like really like aggressive kind of like silencing. It's just the little like it's the very subtle ways of making things not happen. So like you make suggestion, they show that, oh yes, that sounds really good. They don't do it, and then 3 months later, someone else makes the suggestion, and they go through with it. Yes, so it's just like, okay, so I'm just gonna keep my suggestions to myself. I'm done.
The microaggressions, I understand. They accumulate and they reinforce the wrong.
Eventually it's like, okay, I'm just gonna sit back, do what you want. I'm also a very non-confrontational person. I don't look like it all the time because I can talk a lot, but I'm very non-confrontational. But so it becomes hard, like it has reached points where I've exploded, but it was because like someone raised their voice at me. I'm like, I'm not tolerating this. I will escalate. This is not okay.
Yeah, you don't want to think about the consequences anymore.
No, it's just like, yeah, what, like I mean, it started out with a raised voice. I don't know where I don't think it's going to go anywhere because like I've worked with this person for a while, but I mean, there are enough instances in life that you hear about where it's like, okay, I don't want to know where this goes.
Yeah, I understand. That's very sad to hear. And I really hope that the men specifically in our society and everywhere else, they don't really sometimes understand the impact of their actions, right? They do them naturally. They might not necessarily intend to be extremely violent, and I'm not defending anyone here, right? I'm just trying to explain that they need to be more aware of the consequences of even raising their voice a little bit, or being too loud, or being too vocal, or dismissing ideas, things like that. A very common statement in online disputes about gender gap that I hear is, why don't women step up? Why should men do X, whatever that X is, right? Generally followed by some uneducated or very hypocritical and despicable justification that women are silent by nature, or women are quieter by nature, or it's genetic, or it's biology, or it's emotions, or it's whatever stereotypical behavior that you can fit in. So what are your thoughts on this ongoing conversation?
I mean, if it's rooted in the biology, whatever silly arguments these are, it becomes very hard for me to like engage in conversation with people like this, because it's like, okay, I really don't want to waste my time on you. I don't want to waste my time on someone who's just so dead set on believing something that's just so not based in science, while you yourself are claiming to be so scientific. So like, no. And these kinds of views are just so rooted in misogyny, and there's just so much gatekeeping in there that it's just really difficult to engage in conversations like that. But that's not to say that because I personally am very non-combative that other women shouldn't speak up, because it really empowers everyone else when they do. And like, I'm saying this as someone who I feel like I should speak up a lot more. Because like, for example, I saw this not too long ago, and like to this day, I regret not speaking up, but there was a woman who was going to give a talk in a certain community. And then the comments that the men were making were completely about her appearance, and they were making some really derogatory things. And like, you see these things and you want to speak up, but like, am I going to get ganged up on? Because they outnumber me so much. You know, but it's really empowering when one person actually speaks up, and I think it's really important. But I also understand how hard it is, and I think as hard as it is, it really should happen because it empowers everyone else to do so. And in the sense of, why should men, for example, in a situation where the situation that I just mentioned, if someone did speak up, yes, I do think the other men should have backed like the person who spoke up, because like, then they understand that, no, I'm not outnumbered. I do have someone who's going to support me. Like, someone understands that, oh, this is wrong. Because sometimes when this like frat boy mentality is like taking over, you don't know who's on your side.
I understand.
So
it feels like you're alone in a battle of battling like, the whole world. Like,
I mean, you know, you're not, but you also, like, in the sense that, like, I know there are other women in the field, and like there are other women who are there, but sometimes it's like we're so outnumbered, and because it's so patriarchal in a lot of places, like, how is this going to affect me in the future? Is this going to affect my career because of their connections, because they're more trustworthy than I am, just because they're not women?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, there's just, I don't know if I overthink things too much, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who has to go through all of these kinds of thought processes before I understand that no, like, I should speak up, but I don't know like the consequences of it.
Thank you very much for your honesty, Ala. This is, I think, brilliant, and I really hope that whoever's watching this just tries to understand a little bit this perspective. And the next time they are in a situation like this, where someone is struggling to voice out or, just raise a certain concern, I think allyship is very important, where men should step up, not just men, like anyone in the room,
Yeah.
seeing something wrong happening, speak up about it, right? Don't fall into silence, even if this leads to a certain confrontation.
Yeah.
Sometimes the aggressor does not understand what they are doing. And when someone speaks up, they will realize their wrongdoing, and then they will, just that they will probably learn the lesson for the future.
I mean, sometimes the consequences are not as bad as like for example, I make it up to be in my head, but it's just like, there are so many instances. Do I really want to take the risk? And I think it's really worth taking, especially like when you know that, yes, there are other people out there who have the same beliefs. And like the fact that I've connected with so many women who are in the field, and that I've also connected with so many men in the field who actually like understand this perspective, it makes it so much easier in the long run to like stand up and be like, hey, so no, don't do this. It's really just dumb at this point. I don't know if it's like the most politically correct thing to say, but it's dumb at this point.
Fine. No, I fully understand this perspective, and I relate to it. At SC Factory, I had to, because I had to work with a lot of students from different backgrounds, and I worked with both ladies and men, right? Coming from different backgrounds, some of them coming from conservative backgrounds even. So that's even the situation is much worse there, because they even feel worse about their opinions, their ability to speak up, so on and so forth. And I had to constantly bring up to the attention of everyone that this is an open, equal space for everyone to, just be themselves, be the best version of themselves. I had to sometimes intervene, to like tell people to be more silent, less vocal, less loud, so that they can create the space for others, to be more involved. And I fully understand what you're saying. And I still, even with these interventions, I feel like they were not enough.
I mean, I don't think it's that they're not enough. Actually, I think that's an amazing way to just like really bring it up, because that's actually what's helping me break out of my shell, is that my coworkers at the moment are extremely supportive, and they really do constantly remind me that no, I'm valued, and what I do is valuable, and my opinion is valuable, and it makes a huge difference. It's really difficult when you're socialized for so long to be a particular way, to really internalize this. And so like the more you hear it, the more you really like believe it. And so it just becomes easier to act on those. They're not rebellious, but like by the standards of the social construct that is there in the Arab world, the rebellious thoughts, you can act on them now.
I understand. Thank you for this perspective, Ala. I want to talk a little bit also about your early days. You told me that you got introduced to computer science at university, but did someone inspire you in that domain, even if it's at a later stage and not necessarily at the beginning? Like, did you have a role model? You mentioned that there aren't many role models, but did you find one eventually, or?
Yes, basically, but when I started out, it was not, there wasn't much, and I was very academic. And then I was very lucky to be nominated to go to a hackathon in Abu Dhabi. And so I saw so many people there, and I saw that everyone was there, and everyone was like, how do I say, contributing and doing everything and stuff like that. So that really opened up my eyes to like the possibilities. And that really shifted my focus in the way that I pursued, like I continued with my career. And I stopped being, I was still academic. It still mattered to me. It obviously still matters to me now since I'm continuing to pursue it. But like it really shifted my focus from just being purely academic to being someone who really is trying to get immersed in what the industry looks like. And I started really attending hackathons and going to events and seeing people and stuff like that. And just being in those places and seeing people like, for example, Priscilla from Mikey, seeing people like that, like, oh, she's Lebanese and she's a tech founder. That's very interesting to like, to see like, okay, that's someone that I could look up to. Another thing is, at some point, Instagram had like this boom of women in tech. And it was excellent because I got to connect with so many people and like see them like finish their university degrees and like get accepted at Google or start at Amazon or something like that. I'm like, okay, wow. So like this is possible. You know, it's really like, I wouldn't say it was someone like who was just present, who was really like physically there, but it was really just people that I managed to connect with online that I saw fight and I saw being vocal and I saw really just like standing their ground, being opinionated, these kinds of things, and constantly consuming that kind of content. So you have to curate that kind of content for yourself. It's not just gonna, you know, happen. But making sure that I curated that kind of content for myself. It did have its downsides and the like hustle culture thing where eat, breathe, code, but you know, it had its positives.
But it also had a positive side. Yeah. I mean, the hackathon you're talking about is the NYU AD, NYU Abu Dhabi hackathon, right? Yeah, I love that hackathon. I participated once as a mentor over there. I love Sana Adde, she was behind the hackathon. Incredible. She's brilliant.
She's another person that like is there too, 100%. Who's really present.
I love everything she's doing. And that hackathon has life-changing impact. I've seen a lot of students transform after participating in it, right?
Yes, me being one of them. And like 2 years later, I went back as a mentor. It was amazing.
100%. And this transformation from student to mentor to like networking with a lot of amazing, brilliant people from around the world. Yeah, kudos to Sana Adde for her amazing skills. I think the hackathon is back this year as well after being off for a couple of years because of COVID. All right. This is really great. We talked about the gender gap. We talked about the problems. We talked about your perspectives. We talked about role models. I think we brushed a little bit on the solutions and you mentioned some of them, but do you think there's anything else that you want to say about solutions to fixing the gender gap problem? Is there anything that comes to mind that we can do to alleviate or reduce this issue, like, for example, having quota for hiring, increasing diversity and inclusion, doing more specialized training for women? Or
I think some of at least in my perspective, is like really just amplifying the voices of the women who are already there to make sure that they are in the limelight so that other people could really get inspired. That's one thing. And I think that's something that's like more attainable for like the average day-to-day person. Like you could do that. You could really just make that kind of difference. Another thing is like, I think a quota is good, even though it's like, it's debated in terms of like, yeah, but then the skills and then all that kind of stuff. But I think it's helpful because then you know that there's a place for you, but of course you're going to go through the entire interview process and like you are going to get in on your merits, but you know that there is a place for you. So that's I think an important part. I think also just making sure that everyone understands that everyone's like perception at work is different, and the perception of what is a safe work environment is very different. And like just making sure that you ask, because like very often people just don't. And like when I started getting asked, it was a huge difference because like I didn't even realize that was a possibility. Right? So like if you ask, okay, so what can we do, or like what is it that is wrong here, or what made you uncomfortable, or did that make you uncomfortable, or am I being this or am I doing that? So these things help, because then you know that change is possible and it's not that someone is set in their ways. So I think these, like the quota is good, I mean, despite the debate, in my opinion, of course. And I think amplifying other people's voices and just making sure that when you're in the, like, technically speaking, because of the how society is set up, when you're the one in the position of power, just like understand and try to really speak up for other people when they speak up also, and amplify their voices as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that, Alaa. Do you have any advice for the aspiring female software engineers?
Just go for it. Just go for it. It's so rewarding in so many different ways. There's just so much that you can do within the field. Like, you're interested in fashion, you can do computer science and fashion. You're interested in art, you could do computer science and art. You're interested in medicine, you can do computer science and medicine. You could be anywhere. And that's, I think, the most beautiful part of it. And so like, it's just so rewarding, and it's like not worth it to not pursue it because of the gatekeeping. Because like, especially now, there are certain systems in place that have started to really push forward for women in tech. And like, there are a lot of communities like Women Tech Makers or Arabwic or Women in Computing that really like you're backed up. And another thing is like, seek out the women who are already in tech and ask, because I have yet to see a woman in tech who's not more than willing to answer all of the questions that like another woman has about anything, and just like back her up and tell her like if something is going wrong, or because like I've seen so many people be like, yeah, you need some help negotiating something, just DM me. we can discuss how you can negotiate this. Like they're so willing to help other women. So I think just seek out the other women who are in this, and if you have any questions, just be sure that you're going to get an answer.
I think this is a beautiful way to end this conversation. Alaa, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.